How's it going, people? Welcome back to Casual Gamer Reviews. Today I'm going to be looking at a game that has been really difficult for me to score for a variety of reasons. It is Stalker 2: Heart of Chernobyl. Don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of this content. I just wanted to say first, as it is definitely worth mentioning, that the developers GSC Game World should be applauded for even getting the game out, due to them dealing with a real life war. It took me 40 hours to complete this game, reviewed on Xbox Series X. I know I'm very much a casual gamer, but Stalker 2 is essentially the opposite of a casual game. Every single thing is trying to kill you, whether it be people, mutants, the weather, radiation, environmental anomalies, or yourself. Because of this, you will constantly need to be managing several survival elements. On the top level, to literally stay alive, you need to monitor your health, your radiation level, and your bleeding status, as any of these get too severe and you will die on the spot. Use bandages for bleeding, and anti-rad meds or alcohol to deal with radiation. On a less serious level, you will need to monitor hunger, sleepiness, endurance, carry weight, and psi protection. None of these will immediately kill you, but can all contribute bit by bit to your eventual demise. Hunger will make you less able to run away, and maybe your belly rumbling will give away your stealth position. High carrying weight will give you significantly less movement speed and endurance, making it very hard to escape, and trust me, it is almost always worth considering running away than trying to take something head on. Outside of these survival elements, Stalker 2 is a first-person shooter. You will come across many different weapons you can acquire and then upgrade and modify to your heart's content. Skiff, the player character, can equip 2 large weapons alongside a pistol, a knife, and grenades. You can also acquire body armor and a helmet, which can be upgraded and modified the same as weapons. Weapons need to be maintained too, and you will need to repair them as often as possible, as the worse condition they get, the more they will jam and could lead to your death more often than not. The gun combat feels really smooth, and some of the weapon designs look great. This game's special equipable items are called artifacts, and they can be found by scouring the anomalous regions of the zone. Before I talk about these, I will first explain Stalker 2's most interesting asset: the zone and the anomalies it contains. The zone where the Stalker games take place is the real main character of this series. It breathes life and change, and everything that you encounter stems from the zone itself. The most intriguing aspect to me is the anomalies. These can come in many forms, namely electrocution, fire spouts, distorted bubbles of reality, poisonous puddles, whirlwinds, and climaxing at the top level with an emission. Every single one of these anomalies will do a large chunk of damage to you and should be navigated carefully, all except an emission. When an emission occurs, you must drop everything and head to the nearest shelter. You will not survive outside an emission, and the game even makes an announcement when one is imminent. Whatever your quest objective is, it immediately changes to show you where the nearest shelter is, and you just have to haul ass over there, hopefully to make it in time. This game makes you feel vulnerable in every instance, and the emission was a gameplay mechanic that I thought perfectly encapsulated this, and I never once found it annoying. However, other anomalous fields are always worth navigating, as you can find an artifact. You have a sensor that beeps when you are approaching an anomaly, and you should utilize it to avoid death. However, you also get a scanner and a metal bolt, which you should use in combination to make it through these fields safely. The metal bolt can be tossed in front of you to reveal whether your next step will lead to your last breath, or if it is safe to walk. The scanner hones in on the artifact and loosely reveals its location. Some artifacts are rarer than others, but essentially provide a buff. These buffs can be for endurance, elemental or physical protection, damage increase, carrying capacity, etc. Therefore, they play a crucial role in surviving. However, each artifact applies radiation, and so stacking too many will become uncontrollable, which leads to a balancing act. The mutants are varied, and some you have to take a completely different approach to defeat. As I am not a veteran in the Stalker games, this one actually being my first one, it is tough to get your head around them straight away, especially as some are invisible and some have kinesis powers to throw objects at you from anywhere in the room, which becomes very disorientating. It can be frustrating at first, but once you accept that you will die a lot, but learn from it each time, it becomes a sweeter pill to swallow. You can freely switch between difficulties in the pause menu, which is good for a game like this. Speaking of dying, I have to mention the loading screens in this game. They are painfully long for the amount of time you'll have to look at one whilst you wait to reload the checkpoint. We have been spoiled by minimal to no loading screens this generation, but this game is an exception to that rule. It is particularly annoying in boss fights where you will die several times on the same section. The moment-to-moment gameplay in Stalker 2 is at its very best when you are not following quest objectives, but just exploring. The sense of exploration in this is akin to other great open worlds like Zelda or Elden Ring, where you can just see something in the distance and head over to see if any secrets lie there. It could be a cave, a dilapidated house, an abandoned lab, a warehouse, a settlement, or anything of the sort. In a game where scavenging for bullets and healing items is a core mechanic, the exploration is essential. So it is a great bonus that it is also its most fun aspect. Stalker 2 can be both impressive visually, but also very disappointing. You can see a lot of time was put into reflections, ray tracing, and lighting, as some landscapes, especially those that have water in them, are very eye-catching. Sometimes when you are out in the daytime and the light catches the side of your gun just at the right angle, it can look really amazing. However, on the other side of the spectrum is the character models, some of which look like they could have been from a decade ago. Movement is very stiff, facial animations are off, and sometimes the textures can be really low, and that is just off-putting. I consider myself to be quite lenient on graphics, especially as I play so many indies, but it did seem a little up and down in this title. Then there were the bugs. Now, I didn't start playing until a week after release, and 3 major patches had been applied to the game at this point. I didn't experience anything game-breaking like a lot of pre-release reviewers had come across, but I did experience a lot of bugs nonetheless. Even as I was playing, I think 3 or 4 more big patches hit, so you have to applaud the devs for the hard work they are putting in. At the time of finishing this game, on 23rd December, these are the bugs I was still coming across. Texture and asset pop-ins as things were struggling to load in. Consistent frame drops. NPCs constantly clipping through walls and doors and sometimes even falling through the floor. Dialogue would just randomly stop progressing when talking to characters and had to be skipped to progress. Objects and NPCs floating. Bug where your weapon and HUD would not show up after respawning or finishing a cutscene. Bug where my scopes got mixed between weapons. For example, if I had just been using my sniper and then switched to my assault rifle, my rifle would also have the sniper scope. Constantly having a problem with doors not opening fully and then having to close and reopen. A specific bug that would happen when killing a swarm of rats, where they would all just lie still like a JPEG image and then just vanish from the screen very abruptly. And finally, my favourite bug, as it was just hilarious, was the pissing bug. There is an animation in this game where stalkers will walk over to the side or a tree or something and have a piss. But in my game, it was bugged where piss would be coming out of them when not in the correct animation. Sit down on the couch, piss flying out. Lean against the wall and spark up a cigarette, piss flying out. Walking from one room to another, trail of piss just following them. It was incredibly odd. Nothing here was game breaking, but it certainly can be immersion breaking, and so it is worth bearing in mind, as if any of this would annoy you, then you should give the devs more time to straighten it out. I did also get some audio bugs. The music in this game is pretty monotone and bland as it is, but sometimes it will just stop for no reason, and this was so jarring, especially with how often it would happen. The dialogue is okay, but the English voice acting, especially in some of the earlier characters, is really bad. I switched to the Ukrainian voices very quickly early on, but I had to switch back later in the game as I just couldn't keep up with the story, having to constantly read subtitles. Skiff is fine, and the Colonel and a handful of others are okay too, but pretty much everyone else, especially the NPCs, were grating. The first 15 hours of this game I did not enjoy, and that was wholly because of the story. It was just so boring. If the exploration and world hadn't been enjoyable, I probably wouldn't have seen it through. That being said, at around the halfway point, an event happens that injects life into the story and it becomes a lot more interesting. However, by the end of the game, it starts to get really complex and I completely lost the thread of what was happening. I always chose dialogue options to further my understanding of what was happening, but I felt like I was just clutching at straws. When the ending cutscene played, I understood roughly what was going on, but I didn't really understand the minutiae and the overarching impact of my decision. There are so many characters and factions and I really struggled to know who wanted what and who is who. Sometimes you'll get a call from someone or someone is referenced in a conversation and I just could not remember who that person was. I was getting really muddled at times, and maybe it's just me, but I really did try and understand with reading things and exploring extra dialogue, so I can only pinpoint the writing at that stage. There are 4 possible endings, so there is replayability here. They are tied to decisions made along the way and factions you choose whether or not to be friendly with. There is many side quests to engage with. Some are your simple fetch quests, but some I actually really enjoyed, even more so than the main mission. You get good loot, discover some crazy mutants or experiments, and these quests seem to be endless. You can pick them up from pretty much any trader or barman. There are also 2 sections on the map that exist but can't currently be explored, so I would imagine there is some expansions planned further down the line. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl excels in its exploration and survival gameplay. The gun combat feels really good and the mutant variation in addition to the several deadly anomalies molds a creative experience. However, it is let down by its story and its plethora of visual and audio bugs. I would be willing to overlook the bugs considering how hard at work the devs are on it at the moment, but I just can't ignore how boring and then confusing I found the story. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl gets a casual gamer score of 7 out of 10. If you enjoy the content, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, and for everything casual gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.